a tobacco field in Truevine, Virginia, not far from where the brothers were first picked up by a circus bounty hunter in 1900. George and Willie Muse worked the shift known as can see to can't see, or daylight to dark, also known as can to can't. Truevine is a tiny little rural crossroads. It consists basically today of a very vibrant but small church, and there's not a lot here in terms of businesses, but it's a pretty vibrant community. A lot of older people, but if you show up to church on Sunday morning, you get a real sense of the spirit of the community here. So in 1893, one of the most notorious events took place, and it really cemented Roanoke as a really violent and difficult place to be an African American during segregation. And that was the lynching of a furnace worker named Thomas Smith, who was accused, based on very scant evidence, of having assaulted a white woman on the Roanoke City Market. Police arrested Thomas Smith. A lynch mob grew, took him downtown and hung him on a hickory tree. Then they shot him. Then, as if that wasn't enough finality to his life, they brought him on the banks of the Roanoke River here and they burned him. And a Roanoke photo studio took pictures of his corpse as it was hanging, and they sold it as mementos. So that's the climate that was facing African Americans, and that's the world I'm trying to bring to life in this book. So this was the site of the Roanoke City Fairgrounds in 1927 when Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey made its first stop in Roanoke, and somehow it came to Harriet Muse, an illiterate maid. She later told family members that it came to her in a dream that her long-lost sons were with the circus and she was going to get them back. And so it was almost suicidally bold of her what she did. She came to a place where she really wasn't even supposed to be. The circus was very much a segregated institution in the South. In a scene, the family still recounts word for word. Georgie saw their mother and he elbowed his brother Willie and he said, "Look, there's our dear old mother. She's not dead." And they basically dropped their instruments and rushed from the stage and was enveloped by their mother. I mean, it must have been super moving, super kind of strange for the people in the audience, but to Harriet Muse, who had to then fight off lawyers and policemen who wanted the brothers to get back on the train and go to the next stop, it must have been really something. If she could do all that then with no education, just think what she would be like today. The neighborhood we're about to drive in, the oldest residence still referred to as Jordan's Alley. It's in Roanoke's West End, which was the poorest neighborhood in Roanoke then and now. This is the neighborhood where she brought them home. And she lived in a 571 square foot shack, really, no running water. There were 5 people living in the home, and it was right on this property right here. The railroad tracks are just a block away. It was steam railroad at the time. It was very loud and sooty. People remember cinders flying through the air. I met very elderly residents who recalled life in the 20s, and also many of them had known the family, and some of them remembered when the brothers came home. And so we would drive around and they would point out things that no longer existed. So the more traditional black community was called Gainsboro, and it was more prosperous, and it was where there was a thriving music and cultural center during segregation. It's where all the black lawyers and doctors lived and where people went to shop. That was quite a hike from Jordan's Alley to get to Gainsboro. It was a hard time, and it was a complicated time. This book could not have been done without the cooperation and semi-participation of Nancy Saunders, who is Willie and George Muse's great niece. She took care of them late in life. She took wonderful care of them. And she was really the keeper of the story, such that when I first approached her in the early 1990s and asked if I could write a story about her famous great uncles, she pointed to a sign on her restaurant wall. The sign said, "Sit down and shut up."
That was the first time that I had ever met you. And what was so funny about it, that you was just so sure of yourself that you was just going to walk in there and this was going to happen. And I said, just look at that little thing. She just don't realize Scratch has met his match. And I had already said it wasn't happening, so, but you just didn't understand that. Why? Why?
Luckily, a few years ago, she relented and gave me her blessing to write the story as a book, as long as I remembered that in the end, Uncle Willie came out on top.
If we don't have discussions and talk about these things and our history, that a lot of people won't know, a lot of people don't understand, and what the struggle was all about, and where we've come, but we still got a long ways to go. And right today, people are still trafficking people for greed, to make money and to get what they want off of other people. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And when you stop and think about it, just because somebody's a little different or they don't seem to look like what you feel like they should look like, that's still somebody's family. That's still someone's loved one. And stop and think about it before you go to talk about them and thinking that they're a joke. That's not the way it is. That's somebody's family.